Welcome back to the CrossRoad Diner, where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. Oh me, I can't control anything here. I never have been able to. I'm just now figuring out that that's the case. Welcome to the CrossRoad Diner. We're in the back booth again on a Monday for some coaching. And with me today are my co-host, Mr. John Burnett. Say hi.
Hey, howdy. Good to see everybody.
And our guest for the day is Andy Chaleff. Andy is a guy that I've known for, was it 5 years now? How far back did we do that?
Could be 5 years.
Yeah.
You had more hair back then.
Rude of you to notice. Oh, mercy. Andy wrote a great book and had me do the audiobook version of it. And then we connected at a very deep level. And he's become a coach of mine. And we were working last week, and I said something about a decision, and you said, no, it's a choice, not a decision. You know the difference. And I went, oh, yeah. And then I tried to explain it to John, and I realized I don't really know.
It took me years. Like, it was said to me, and like I had to get my head around it, and then I had to like sink into my experience, because if someone gives a definition, it doesn't matter. It's your experience, and then you can ground in that awareness within yourself. So yeah, I can understand.
We'll take a swing at it, though.
That's good.
Help us understand.
Not just me.
No, it takes a bit of time to understand it, right? But there's one distinct, I like how we just jump right in. Like, we could kiss before saying, let's go to bed. Like we can slow down a little bit here. Like, how was your day? But that's fine. Let's go right there. So
nobody wants to know how my day was. But I can choose that. I just decided not to.
That's fine. What my mentor, my dear friend and my mentor, Case Brown, who since has died, some 7 years ago now.
Right.
He was very clear on this distinction, and he mentioned it to me several times. And maybe the first 2 years I didn't quite get it, and then the next say following 5 years, I'm like, oh, the distinction between these two is so important to understand, because without it, you actually don't realize that times you're making choices and you think you're making a decision. And I'll now go into what that really means.
Okay.
He said, and I'm going to make it really like as easy, the Occam's razor of the definition. A decision excludes future choices.
Okay.
I'll say it 3 times over. A decision excludes future choices. And so what happens, but a choice, I can make a choice any given moment. And the choice can be this tomorrow. It can be that the day after. It can shift. But if I say, I am going to stop drinking, that's a decision. That means in the future, I can't drink. That's a decision. I'm not going to have beers tonight. That's a choice. If I say, I'm not going to sacrifice my happiness for money the rest of my life, that's a decision. If I say, this job is probably going to be a little bit nicer than that job, I'm not really happy, so let's try that one. That's a choice.
Got it.
If I say, I'm not going to have a job in the financial service industries the rest of my life because I've had enough of it, that's a decision.
Yeah.
Because it excludes future choices.
And I'm getting that the exclusion of anything else is the entire test.
That is the test. And you'll see most people will go through their lives and not realize they've never made a decision their entire lives.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll tell you that the point of wrestling that we had was the reality that those two words, I'll simply speak for me, have felt or been used interchangeably throughout, even to the point that I'm listening to you and I'm going, I would now I don't, I didn't go into Webster's, pull up definitions or anything, but I can tell you that the thought process is, if I make a choice, that I've also made a decision, and they're interchangeable. And Steve and I kind of went down the road of what that sounds like and looks like. And, but what I'm hearing, and with clarity on the exclusion of future choices, is really kind of more of a, for what we're talking about, forget all that. Forget about Webster's, forget about how you've looked at it before, forget about what you think they are as far as interchangeable or not interchangeable. This is what you need to look at. The verbiage, the how we pronounce it, whatever, be damned. Come back here and say, listen, when you make a decision, you have excluded future choices. And I'm also gonna throw in, and this is maybe a point of questioning, to the best of your ability at this point in time, you've excluded future choices or options or whatever. Is that a fair assessment, or is it like, no, it doesn't matter? It's like,
I would say at the moment when you made it, you said categorically, I'm done. When I don't believe, like, so when I was really, so we're at the CrossRoads Cafe, and
CrossRoads Diner, depending on, which neighborhood you're in.
I can't get him in a diner. He goes to cafes. European thinker.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm at the diner. So what the reason why for me this is so important at the diner is because I was 35, and I honestly don't feel like I made a decision until I was 35 years old. Because I look back and I'm like, okay, when I was in high school, I kind of knew I was going to go to college because my two brothers went to college and there was an expectation of me. And then I kind of had 5 choices, and I took one of those 5 choices. And then, so it was always this feeling of, I never categorically said, no, I'm not going to, and whatever I do, it has to include this. It was always, let me adapt to my environment because I'm a little bit insecure, and I want to keep one foot in the safety zone. So the first time I made a real decision was when I was a marketing director, in the world of successful. I was definable, successful, whatever that means. Yeah. And I said, whatever I do the rest of my life, I will not work for money. I made that decision. That was a decision. Yeah. And it lives till today. Like, clients will come, they might have a lot of money. They might say, I want your services. And I'll say no. And it was because that decision is held true now 15 years later.
Yeah.
Now, if I didn't make that decision, I'd compromise. And then it was a choice. It was a choice I made at that moment, and I didn't hold true to it. That's the reason why the decision is so clear, because it defined my life afterwards.
That's good. That's huge. That defining point, the idea that, and I think back as you're talking about 35, I'm thinking in college, and I made the choice when I was younger to go to Texas A&M and go out for the football team, right? But I didn't really make that decision until I was a senior in high school. I had other choices and like seriously considered. In fact, I signed, sealed, and delivered to the Air Force, got my commission and all that stuff that you do. And then I'm like, that was a choice I made, but it was not in my heart. It was not the dream that I'd had my whole life. And so there was a point where I'm like, that's not happening. I am going to Texas A&M. That is where I'm going to get my degree, and I'm going to go out for the football team. That was a choice that later became a decision. And so, I love that. That helps bring, and really it was more of nomenclature or whatever when we were kind of wrestling with it before, because I do look at them as the same word. But the idea is forget about how you're looking at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry if Steve, I always want to say the CrossRoads Diner.
Yes,
so
sir.
I have to slow words down when I forget them once. So in the CrossRoads Diner, what I don't think people understand is that in their unhappiness, they actually have to make a decision. And the decision has consequences that they cannot anticipate ahead of time. And it screws with the mind, because anyone who got to this point wants control. I mean, they're letting go of, we always say, like, even if you're like unhappy in that where you are, your unhappiness. So I'm comfortable with the unhappy. I made peace with that.
Yeah.
So when you're at that moment, you're actually making, or not yet having made a decision that I'm not going to do what I was doing before. And this is the critical point, not knowing what the consequences are going to be ahead of time. And that's that point that sucks. It's the point where you jump off the building and you have no idea how far it's going to be before you land, and if you're going to get caught or if you're going to splatter. And that's the decision that really is, it's like you can't, when you hold someone's hand in that moment, it's one of those most beautiful things, because it's almost like you're holding their hand at a tender, vulnerable, it's a chance for me to live the life I want, and I don't even know what that looks like yet. That was it, Steve.
Yeah, it's leap of faith. But I work with the Texas Business Hall of Fame. I talk to the cream of the crop of business people in Texas, and almost all of them have said, I am glad I didn't know what I was getting into when I started, because I probably wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
But we were determined, committed, we made a decision that we were going to get XYZ done, and it did not matter what the consequences were.
Yeah.
It's the word commitment, really, in many ways. I had a teacher once who talked about the difference between commitment and involvement is best described with a ham and egg breakfast. The chicken was involved, the pig was committed, and there were prices to pay. And that's great. John, do we have more questions that we can unpack with this in your mind? All the years that he said it took him to make one decision after he figured that out.
I love the thought. Of course, I love any mind that says, I don't really care what the definition has been or what you think it is. Here's how we're going to help you clarify how you're going through life. And that's really what you've done, or your mentor did, is said, hey, listen, decisions are different from choices. This is how we're going to define a decision. And that simple concept of not only, and I love, that it excludes future choices is huge, but it's also your future will never be the same. So it is life defining as you go through. I'm going to, with your permit, actually, even if you don't give me permission, I'm going to use it in my coaching too, because I love it. So it's really interesting to think about how a decision truly does shape our future, and how choices, they can shape it for a moment or two, right? Taking a different job, all those things do bring a different shape, but not the same as, for instance, for me, leaving corporate America. That was a decision, and I tell people all the time, I've lived too long in the jungle. I could never go back to the zoo. Something could happen, I'm sure, but every time I think about that, I'm like, or I could just work harder at what I'm doing and figure it out over here in the jungle. I can make it through this, climb this tree, make it over the mountain, whatever. So yeah, I love it.
So Andy, what are you prepared to talk about with respect to things that you're up to now, or that are happening here in the next several months?
I mean, I've always seen my life as wanting to live by example. And then when I mentor someone, they always kind of laugh, because I'm like, I'm not here to teach you anything. We're here to interact. And through the interaction, hopefully I'll model a behavior that you begin to sense. And then the success for me comes when an individual starts saying, I don't really need to talk to you because I already have you in my head. And I think the only reason that you can do that is if you're consistent in your own behavior. And if the feedback you give comes from obviously a place of love and a place of almost like a deep understanding of humanity. If you understand yourself well, then you can understand how another operates, and then it's sort of like the world's a reflection of me, and I learn about myself through observing the world. So what I've done, I have a book coming out in September called The Connection Playbook, and it's a third book, and the first two books were narratives, very easy reads, very enjoyable. You almost read it in a day. It don't even feel like it took any time because it was so effortless. Third book kind of was, the funny thing is, if you look at the energy of a masculine or feminine, the masculine energy wants answers. Tell me the formula. Tell me how to do it. And so the third book was my endeavor to give more of those in the way I could do it responsibly, because I think we all know every modality has value. If you believe the modality, then you're stuck in that again. So the free mind says, okay, I'm looking at the world almost as a white sheet, and I'm taking it in, and I'm now trying to work it out for myself. If someone gives you a model it's a great anchor or a great, crutch. It gives you one way of looking at the world, but unfortunately, people will adopt that one way, and then that becomes their next limitation. So what I'm doing is trying to thread the needle with. I'm going to share a way I see the world and give you examples of how you can kind of reflect. There's 30 chapters. Each chapter has a lesson in it. Yeah. And I've even made a board game, which is used so couples can sit across from one another. They play like what looks like Battleship. They both X an acrylic marker on two factors, trust and respect. Because if you want to understand a relationship, trust and respect are the two factors where you'll understand really quickly the dynamic of both sides have questions that are trust-based questions, respect, and then you pull up the separator and then you see the responses of either part. You'll very quickly have very deep discussions. And so that game is part of it, because in the first chapters, I focus on trust and respect and why those are the prerequisites for healthy relationships.
Is that game available, or is that just something
It'll be available in September. I mean, I've got it here. I'll be play testing it over the next months.
You need beta testers for you?
Of course I need the beta testers. I'm running into the challenge of, it's funny because I need to get the what do we call it? I don't want to put someone in the world that gives people more struggle. Sometimes you might not trust or respect someone in your partner, and it works just fine. And I don't want to meddle in that because somehow you found. But so I need to have a very good facilitation, because when someone puts a mark that doesn't necessarily feel good, and there's no moderator there, God forbid someone then makes a narrative and they don't even get closer through this interaction. They may separate. And now, so I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the mechanics of the facilitation after the questions are asked.
Okay. Yeah. Well, John, I think you can see why I love this guy so much.
Yeah, he's a rock star.
Yeah, and why I enjoy our time together so much. Andy, thanks for dropping in. We're gonna do this with you more, because there's some things that I want to ask you that you were triggering just now. But my commitment on these is nuggets, that we get a nugget of an idea and we don't branch out in 12 directions. Because folks who come to the CrossRoad Diner, it's a while before they even discover they're there. If you come to a place where you need to change direction because what you're doing isn't you, that is a big, big internal revelation. It's almost half the battle, some would say. I don't think it's quite that much. I think the real battle is this decision that life needs to be different, and I need to engineer that, and I need to be responsible for that.
Hallelujah. I'd like to have my own topics to bring on the show. Like, I'd like to do one show on your inappropriate shirt wear. Like the whole idea that every day it's another Hawaiian print. Like, I want something other than Hawaiian print. And I want you to take all of your wardrobe, put it behind you. We're going to go piece by piece.
Okay.
Each item.
You will get a yes, yes, and an amen from me on that one.
With friends like us, you don't need enemies, Steve.
Well, yeah, it's the Rodney Dangerfield. This thing, I get no respect. You know what I mean? Okay, Any Chaleff and John Burnett, thanks for delving once more into just the nuances in which the importance of how you engineer the quality of your life are found. And we'll be with you next Monday with another topic in the back booth on the corner of the CrossRoad Diner. See you then. For a limited time, if you are in the CrossRoad Diner, if you're facing a change and you think you could use a friendly ear, drop a line to Steve at thecrossroaddiner.com and we'll set you up for an appointment to see what your next steps might be. Until next time, though, this is the CrossRoad Diner, where your spirit goes when it might just be time to change direction.